a war.
N.B.E. 2, ZB7, B127. The guy goes by many names, but to us, he's simply known as Bumblebee, an iconic character who's managed to pull himself from the shadows of a main flagship protagonist and become the face of the Transformers brand in his own right. Whether you want to admit it or not, Michael Bay was the genius responsible for bringing that magical bond between man and machine to life on the big screen, with Bumblebee serving as that vessel. And since then, that trend has continued in other projects and ultimately led to the little Autobot that could getting his own solo spin-off, and rightfully so, that's ultimately led me to making this video. Now before we do a deep dive in today's topic, I gotta give a major shout out to the sponsor, Wondershare Filmora. I often get comments from subscribers saying how I inspired them to want to become a content creator like myself, but they're uncertain if they can do so because they don't know the first thing about video editing. Not to mention that most editing software can burn a big hole in your wallet. But you needn't worry about that, because Wondershare Filmora 10 will provide you with everything you need to become the ultimate content creator. Not only is it popular, but it's very noob friendly, which makes it perfect for both beginners and experienced editors like myself. Like, I'm honestly surprised how many features this thing includes. There's an insane amount of preset templates like effects, filters, transactions, and even tons of royalty-free music, so you don't have to worry about those annoying audio copyright claims when you upload it to YouTube. And the latest version of the software includes some very awesome new features, like this AI portrait add-on that allows me to recreate effects from my favorite movies, or remove backgrounds from videos without the use of green screen, and the audio effects feature, which includes effects like echo, reverb, and foam. Like, I barely scratched the surface of everything you can do with this software, but if you really want to get started on your journey to become the ultimate content creator, I highly recommend you download Wondershare Filmora 10. So click the link provided in the description box and try it for free. Just want to give a heads up that the trial version will have a watermark on it, but if you comment what you think of the latest version of Filmora or share your own video creation using the hashtag #CreateWithFilmora and tag me on Twitter, Filmora team will pick a lucky winner from each to give away a 1-year free license. But yeah guys, in my last critical analysis we measured the strengths of all the different versions of Megatron from the live action filmverse, and we ultimately came to the conclusion that the 07 movie Megatron was the strongest. This has been a video segment that began with Optimus Prime, so it was inevitable that we get around to doing one for Bumblebee. As you all know, Transformers Rise of the Beast is right around the corner and will serve as a sequel to the Bumblebee movie. Many of you have asked me if these movies will serve as prequels to the Bay films, since there are elements that suggest that they are in that continuity. The fans just want to know if they're connected. But since Paramount has yet to address this, we'll continue as if the movies exist in two separate continuities. Anyways, some of you may remember that I thought it was too early to draw any comparisons between Michael Bay and Travis Knight's interpretation of Bumblebee. For one, Knight's version has barely gotten his feet wet in terms of battles, as opposed to Bay's version, who's essentially become a killing machine who's leading the scoreboard with Decepticon heads. Right off the bat, you'll notice that Bayverse Bee is a little overpowered. Although he's not the strongest or most powerful of the Autobots compared to the likes of Optimus, he more than makes up with his bottomless well of luck, determination, and bravery. No matter how many times he's on his back foot, he always manages to overcome pretty much any obstacle, whether it be because of his human companions jumping in to help, or him choosing when he wants to use his voice to prevent himself from getting his head cut off by his leader. He always comes out on top, and he's managed to survive and appear in every Transformers film, which is crazy because he's managed to do something even Optimus Prime couldn't, and that's not die. Something that's also surprising is the fact that he's had the most design changes and alt modes of any Transformer in the live action filmography. In the first film, he appears as a dilapidated 1977 Chevy Camaro, and after fighting with Barricade and Frenzy, he soon transforms into a modern 2009 Camaro concept. Michael Bay stated in an early interview that Bumblebee stands at 17.5 feet tall, but according to the official game strategy guide, he stands at approximately 16 feet tall. His computer-generated model consisted of 7,608 individual parts, 1,511,727 polygons, 19,722 rig nodes, and 8,094 texture maps. The volume of all the pieces came to 1,069 cubic feet. And I can imagine that those pieces only increased as he went on to be featured in the later installments. In Revenge of the Fallen, he sports a different set of alloy wheels and a custom front bumper. He also comes with a unique Chevy logo design with red outlines in it and redesigned fog lights. For Dark of the Moon, he's a Camaro SS, and his color changes from yellow to amber with thicker black stripes that run across his hood, roof, and trunk. In addition, he has dark colored rims and side mirrors as well as a rear spoiler. Also in the film, he has a stealth force battle mode in which he can use his weapons in car mode without fully transforming and still being able to seat a driver and passengers. The next time we see him in Age of Extinction, he has 2 new modes. Since the Autobots are now considered wanted fugitives under the guise of Cemetery Wind, B has to switch it up and take on the form of a modified 1967 Chevy Camaro as opposed to the more modern version. This design sports just a yellow front bumper and a rear spoiler, and this vehicle is looking similar to the Dodge Hellcat. After reuniting with Optimus and the rest of the newly introduced Autobots, he scans a 2014 Chevy Camaro concept with an all-new look, with some major changes, now including a new front look with some advanced lamps including a dove black front bumper, black long side skirts, and new black rims. This time, there is only one stripe on the hood. By the time the last night rolled around, he was sporting a custom-built 2016 Camaro ZL1 concept, and as a brief mentioning, we see him transforming into a Mercedes-Benz 770 during his World War II days. So as you can see, this guy's been around the block, or should I say the battlefield, since he hit the silver screen. Due to a severe battle injury, he was rendered effectively mute and communicates through the use of selected playback of radio and television signals. In the IDW movie tie-in comics, his voice box was ripped out by Megatron during the big battle of Tiger Pax. However, the biography of the Decepticon hardtop figure states that he and Bumblebee are old rivals, and it was not Megatron who damaged Bumblebee's vocal processor, but a shot from Hardtop's gun. And then you have the Bumblebee movie, which is the direct opposite of both instances. But we'll go more in depth with that later. Although his original voice is restored at the end of the first Transformers film, he communicates solely through his radio in Revenge of the Fallen, Dark of the Moon, and Age of Extinction, so there's a bit of plot contradiction there. But despite his vocal disability, this version of B is a very effective fighter. As I mentioned earlier, he has quite the Decepticon head count, a record that dares to compete with his leader Optimus Prime. Over the years, we've seen him pull off some of the most graceful and downright brutal kills on his enemies. Something that was made apparent is that he loves using mixed forms of Cybertronian martial arts, such as this sick capoeira kick that he performs on Lockdown and Age of Extinction, or these judo throws that he performs on Barricade in the first film. He also has a knack for exploiting his enemies' weak spots. During Operation Firestorm, he managed to rip out the spine of the ravenous Ravage, which then he followed up by slapping Rampage with it and finished him off by ripping his arms off and overexpanding his neck with a powerful kick, killing them. And during the Battle of Chicago, he killed Shockwave by punching straight through his chest and blasting his head to bits. Since we're on the topic of blasters, we have to talk about B's arsenal. Firstly, we have his primary blaster, the Plasma Cannon, which fires bursts of plasma energy at his enemies. In Revenge of the Fallen, he featured machine guns, which would later be equipped to his vehicle form in Dark of the Moon. For Age of Extinction, he had multiple missile launchers and a laser cannon which was housed in his arm-mounted Pentaclaw. By the time the last night rolled around, he had a ton of features which till this day feels like they came out of nowhere. For some unexplained reason, he now wields the ability to dismantle and reshape himself, which is completely OP. And he has a hammer that he's apparently had since World War II, but he didn't use it for all those years until he fought Nemesis Prime. And I'd like to think that he forgot about it and suddenly remembered it when Kay told him that he has to be his old self, which is ZB7, but who knows. These movies contradict themselves so much that the producers find themselves wondering where they can go next with the franchise. But I digress. Overall, Bayverse Bee has brought the character mainstream success, and his influence has trickled over to other media. For better or worse, the notorious radio voice has gone on to be his signature trait in shows like Transformers Prime and Transformers Cyberverse. And the latest movie to continue with this is his self-titled film, Bumblebee. This version of the character is relatively new to the game of battling and doesn't have nearly as many kill points as his Bay counterpart, but as soon as he makes his appearance, he makes it clear that he's still as tough. As the Autobot resistance found themselves outnumbered by Decepticon seekers, Bumblebee came crashing in, taking out a couple of them and completely beheading one of them. So he isn't necessarily a spring chicken when it comes to combat. In all honesty, he's very similar to the first version in that department. Like Bayverse Bee, he utilizes a lot of judo throws where he uses his opponent's momentum against them, and he performs capoeira to quickly recover. The major difference between the two is that he's significantly smaller. I tried looking for details on how many pieces makes up his CGI model, but I think it's obvious that it's very minimal compared to even the 07 Bay version, and I think it's due to the producers trying to dial it back on the designs to make it easier for the viewers to follow the action. Not to mention that the budget was way smaller compared to the previous films, but the smaller size works to this version's advantage. Even though he's nothing more than a Volkswagen Beetle, he utilizes it very well. like in this one scene where he outruns a police car while transforming from his alt mode to his robot mode with superb maneuverability. Something that's worth noting is that this Bumblebee has the most robot and vehicle mode designs featured in one film. Funny enough, this is the first time he's featured a Cybertronian vehicle form in the live action films. When he lands on Earth, he scans a military jeep, and shortly after he loses his memory and voice box, he takes on his signature G1 form, which is a beetle, totaling his alt modes to 3 within the span of an hour. And shortly before the film comes to a close, he scans a 77 Camaro, which makes his 4th vehicle form in a single film. But despite the various alt mode upgrades, his arsenal is very minimal compared to his taller counterpart. He features a left arm shotgun and retractable blade that looks like a box cutter. As an honorable mention, he also has stealth mode with machine guns, but due to his memory losses, he only uses it during the battle on Cybertron. So he's forced to use the basics, which aren't really that impressive compared to Bayverse Bee's plasma cannon or hammer. But what the little guy lacks in firepower, he more than makes up with intuitiveness. No matter how critical the circumstances are, this version is constantly learning and adapting. Before Blitzwing could execute him, Bee emerged triumphant by jamming one of Blitzwing's missiles into his superstructure, blowing the Decepticon's secret to smithereens. And when Dropkick transformed into his helicopter mode, Bee threw a chain in his propeller, causing him to be completely ensnared once transformed back into his robot mode. Before the Decepticon could let off a joke about Bumblebee's little chains, Bee yanked the chain hard, dismembering him and rupturing his internals, causing him to explode, with his burning decapitated head landing beside the Autobot scout's feet. Lastly, we saw him completely outwit Shatter. Before she could finish Bee off, the Autobot blew a hole in the wall of the adjacent dock, flooding the area and causing the giant cargo ship docked there to crash into them. While Bumblebee safely escaped, Shatter was destroyed as the exploding ship crushed her against the dock. So as you can see, Travis Knight's version of the little bug is worthy of competing with Michael Bay's Killing Machine. While they have their differences, they have a few things in common, such as their fighting styles. It's also important to note that whenever they're about to kill someone, they emphatically lower their battle mass before doing so. So they're very similar, but the question still remains: who would win if the two squared off in a Cybertronian slugfest? Firstly, I think it's only important that we point out their weaknesses. One thing that keeps Bayverse Bee from being the absolute best Autobot is his childlike nature and devil-may-care attitude. He seems like he's trying his best, but he shows all the signs of a young bot forced to grow up too fast, with his impulsiveness sometimes giving the Autobots as much trouble as their adversaries. For example, during the time he had taken over as the Autobot leader while Optimus Prime was away, Drift and the others weren't too pleased, with Drift even going so far as to call Bee a child, which resulted in the two getting into a scuffle. And there was that time that Crosshair had to give him a good scolding after it was discovered that Bee had a tracker placed on him, which gave away the location of the Autobots' hideout.
Brought him right to us. When are you gonna grow up?
Something else worth noting is that most of the times Bee was triumphant in battle, he had help from either a human or Autobot companion. One key instance would have to be when he was about to be destroyed by Soundwave. If it wasn't for Willie and Brains chewing through wires, which caused the Decepticon ships to drop, Bee would have gotten his head blown off right before Sam's eyes. So although Bayverse Bumblebee is an experienced soldier, his most effective weapon is the insane amount of luck and assistance he has. Now, when it comes to Travis Knight's version of Bumblebee, his biggest weaknesses are obviously his size and reluctance to engage in battle due to his memory loss. Because he hesitated to defend himself from the military, he left his guard down, which allowed Blitzwing to completely get the drop on him. And due to his small stature, he's really easy to overpower, which was the case when he faced off against Shatter and Dropkick. So those two things hold him back by a lot. But there was this unexplained instance that alludes to him being a cold energon killer. After witnessing Agent Burns manhandle Charlie, Bee went into this instant kill mode that unlocked a newer, bigger version of his shotgun, which he shot off viciously at the Sector 7 soldiers, but he quickly snapped out of it after Charlie was able to talk him down. If he were able to tap into that kill mode, which I hope they explain in Rise of the Beast, he would be super effective on the battlefield. Now, if the two versions of this character faced off, it could have multiple outcomes. Since Bayverse Bee is the larger of the two, he could easily overpower N.B.E, either with his strength or his expansive collection of weapons and abilities. Bayverse Bee obviously has more battlefield experience, so he could easily exploit the second Bee's weaknesses, and he wouldn't be reluctant to kill him if he had to. However, since Bayverse Bee can be very childish at times, he'd probably take Knight's V lightly, which could lead to his downfall. And I could see N.B.E using his wits to secure the victory over his taller counterpart. If he were to use his instant kill mode, he could shoot at Cam or Cade, causing Bayverse Bee to divert his attention and try to save them. However, if Bayverse Bee was critically hit, he could use his reshaping ability to quickly disassemble himself to avoid being hit in a vital area. But once he tries to put himself together, N.B.E could easily look for that source of that ability and blast it, rendering Bayverse completely immobile. There are so many ways this battle could go, so if I were to pick the victor, it would have to go to Bumblebee. And I mean both versions of the character, which means this one is a draw. I know a lot of you were expecting me to choose Bumblebee since that one is obviously bigger and has way more kills than Knight's version, but as I pointed out, he wouldn't have most of those kills if it weren't for the assistance he received, and he's way too childish, so even though the odds are stacked in his favor, he still has a chance of losing to N.B.E. Every kill this version has gotten he did all alone without the aid of others. Like, even though Charlie was right there, she was nothing more than a mere distraction to him. He spent more time trying to keep her safe while fighting off characters like Dropkick, but his quick thinking allowed him to overcome these obstacles, and I believe he would overcome anything Bayverse throws at him. So the winner is both of them. But yeah guys, I hope you enjoyed this little versus breakdown because I had a blast making it. There was a lot of thought that went into it, and I love both versions of Bee for what they are, and even though the radio voice has gotten played out, it's arguably one of the best gimmicks they've given the character. Anyways, what are your thoughts on this? Do you think Bayverse Bee should have won, or do you think Nightverse Bee should have taken it? Or do you agree that both could have taken a W? Let me know in the comments below. As always, I ask you like or dislike the video. It doesn't have to be a thumbs up, it can be a thumbs down. Any feedback is good feedback and will only help me improve on my channel. But if you really enjoyed it, it will help me out tremendously if you shared with all your friends and followers on social media outlets. Sharing really makes a difference. But once again, this is your boy RBG signing out on another video. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.